Hello, everyone over there on the internet, and welcome to today's episode of Always Right. Today, there is a story that has been making the rounds this past week that sort of inspired this whole rabbit hole. But today, we are going to be talking in general about environmentalism, its purpose in your life, and why what most of you have been told, and pretty much everything you have been told is false and intended to mislead. So, but before we get into it, Stephen, how are you today, bud? I don't know if he's frozen or if he's trolling me, but yeah, okay. We're going to talk about environmentalism today, and let me begin by going over sort of what we mean when we say environmentalism. There is Stephen there. All right.
Internet's acting up. I'm gonna get it straightened out. Don't worry.
Gotcha. So what we mean when we say environmentalism, and this is a game that communists like to play, in that they name one of the many denominations of their religion, because communism and wokeism is a religion, and environmentalism is a denomination of that religion. They name it something innocuous. They name it, caring about the environment. They name it, they use Black Lives Matter is a good example of this. They name it something that is impossible to argue with. So that when I say that environmentalism is a death cult, the natural response is, what? You don't care about the environment?
What? You don't care about Earth? And it's the same thing with Black Lives Matter, right? Whenever Black Lives Matter started to really raise its head, you would say things like they're a communist cult, neo-Marxist organization that is trying to ruin the nuclear family, and they would go, "Oh, you don't care about Black people." Well, no, I love all people, but the organization known as Black Lives Matter is bad. And so the same thing's true with environmentalism. I love the earth. I love the many resources that it provides for us as humans, but environmentalism is bad.
Right. And so you can think of it as, when we say environmentalism, what we're referring to is environmental activism specifically.
Yeah.
Because we know some of the most nature-loving people in the world. And we have our own fun out in nature and care about preserving certain. Never get in an argument about caring about the environment with a hunter, because no one cares more. But here lately, you have the neo environmentalism, a lot of these green initiatives. Green is a term they like to use a lot. Climate change is another excuse for all of their madness that they like to use. And these new weirdos are split really into two groups. You have the people at the bottom, who are the useful idiots. And what they have engaged in really is a sort of worship of the earth, a worship of nature. And it stems from basically their own desire to be important. Everybody has a religion, everyone, and this is a lot of people's new religion, is worship of the earth. These are your true believers. These are the misled morons.
Well, and it started to rear its head how popular it was during COVID, right? Whenever we locked down for 2 weeks, you would see people going, "Oh, look, Mother Earth is healing. All of us terrible humans aren't out destroying her. And look at the cleaner waters and the cleaner," and they would find stock photos of crap all over the place and input them somewhere and say, "Oh, look, the Earth is healing herself." I'm like, that's the most paganistic thing I've ever heard. This is ridiculous.
Right.
But if you said that, you were considered to be an Earth hater.
Yeah, these are your hippie weirdos. I use hippie as an insult fairly regularly.
Yeah.
Should be insult.
It is an insult.
Yeah. So those are your useful idiots. And then there are the actual movers and shakers in the environmental activism, the people that fund these sorts of things, the politicians that push these sorts of policies. And there's a it's very simple as to why environmentalism is so popular on the left with communists and the like. And it is because it gets them what they want. It's that cognitive dissonance that you can sort of engage in whenever you say, here's my, good thing A bill. You have to support good thing A bill because it's called the good thing A bill. What, you want to have bad things happen? That's how politics really gets done. The Respect
Let's
for
put
Marriage
titles on
Act,
this.
the Respect for Marriage Act, for example,
Exactly.
is working its way through Congress. What, you don't have respect for marriage? If I call it out for what it is, an attempt to legalize perversion, then I get attacked for not respecting marriage.
Yeah, they would do this with any bill. They could come out with a bill called the Save the Puppies Act, and buried in page 573 of that bill, it will, outlaw anyone who carries a toddler and a animal in the vehicle at the same time. And we go, oh no, we don't want to do that. We're against this bill. And they go, oh, you don't want to save puppies? No, I just think the nonsense that you put in this bill is stupid. That's what I think.
So
You brought up the Respect for Marriage Act. I would bring up the Inflation Reduction Act. It doesn't reduce inflation. It is an environmental law that they passed that is a boondoggle in spending, and it has nothing to do with reducing inflation. As a matter of fact, it's going to raise inflation.
Right. So environmentalism has long been a nice veneer to put over a lot of these more insidious tasks and goals that has sort of allowed them to get things done. And it's really to bring, as we'll discuss, a lot of environmental goals that higher ups tend to have are in aligned so that they can kind of bring a more of a gap between the haves and the have-nots in society. Capitalism has sort of bridged that gap quite a bit, and hierarchical people are not happy with that. We'll get into it. So what are the issues that sort of comprise the environmental agenda? And there are several and many. Obviously, you hear Chicken Little quite often claim that the sky is falling. The seas are rising, the ice caps are melting, global cooling, global warming, climate change. All of these have been basically, the argument is that we are living on borrowed time, and that our Earth is doomed. That's actually not.
I see one of these articles about. Go ahead.
No. It's that's not one of the issues we have listed here to talk about, but obviously, it's what most people think about when they think of environmentalism. And the reason we don't have it to talk about a lot is because it's just hogwash. It's just garbage.
Yeah, well, let's just hit it and debunk it real quick. Okay, so I see one of these articles about once every 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. It's, hey, if we don't do something about the climate now, experts say we're at a tipping point. We're at a climate emergency. Okay, an emergency is something that is happening now that is hurting you now. If I call the fire department and I say, hey, I have an emergency, and they go, what? I say, my house is going to burn down in 100 years. That's not an emergency. That is something that I can fix between now and the 100 years. With the climate thing, they are saying that we are in a climate emergency because according to all available data, the Earth's climate is going to raise by 1 degree Celsius or roughly 2.4 degrees Fahrenheit over the next 100 years. 1, that's not an emergency. 2, that's not a problem. That will save more people than it kills. More people are killed. And you can Google these statistics. It's very easy to find. More people are killed every year by cold than they are by heat. So the Earth actually warming by 1 degree Celsius over the next 100 years is actually going to save more people than it's going to kill. So it's just complete hogwash and wrong.
I also question whether, the science behind that
whether it
analysis
actually,
in and
yeah,
of
yeah,
itself.
and like you said, well, it'll raise the seasons, it'll do this. Well, you have 100 years to fix New Orleans. Okay, New Orleans was in a big problem before Hurricane Katrina because the levees were not made for anything more than the Category 3 hurricane, and it was built below sea level. Hey, don't build cities below sea level. But now they had a hurricane this past year. You didn't hear anything about it because you can fix things over time. So if you know something's going to hack over 100 years, you can fix it. So there, completely debunked in a minute and a half. Next.
Right. So, but yeah, there are still people who are going to argue that this is the problem that we must solve, and so we must decarbonize everything. And this is where the actual, they argue a bunch of abstract notions in the climate change arguments, but this is where they actually come up with policy that is harmful. And as I said, I don't think the purpose is to combat climate change. That's the stated purpose. The purpose is to limit the options that you as a person in society have to live freely. They are purposefully taking us back in technological advancement because it will cripple the lower to middle class. So the first thing we should talk about is the problem with oil. Oil, coal, any of these quote unquote dirty resources, non-renewable resources, fossil fuels, they're called several things. These are the things that power our society. Every technological advancement you have is because of the innovation in coal, in oil, in gas. This allows our society to run. And it is fought against at every level of government now. We have governments that are actively trying to. So we have a president or an administration currently that is actively trying to reduce our strategic oil reserves, not to reduce your gas prices, but specifically because so that we don't have that oil to rely on. We have souring relationships with many oil producers across the globe. We are not. It is very difficult and or illegal to get access to new oil reserves in the United States.
Yeah, let's talk about this for a moment. You're talking about all the challenges. I want to start off with this fact. The United States of America has more oil, more coal, more natural gas than any other country in the world. We have more of it than anyone. We have the deepest reserves that exist in the history of ever. That's one of the reasons it was so important for us to get Alaska, because much of that comes from Alaska. You know, we hear here recently, we hear about the importance of Russia when it comes to oil and natural gas because they provide so much to Europe. Russia's got nothing on the United States, has nothing on us. So pulling us away from these very important resources is a huge national problem, and it will cause problems for foreign policy, for domestic policy, for everything. There's no reason that you should be paying $3 a gallon for gasoline. We have more of it here in the United States than anywhere else in the world. So, Jeff, why are we paying so much for fuel? Why is our heating bill going up this winter? Why is that happening? Now you can hit what you were about to say.
Right. It is because we are actively trying to discourage the use of these resources. The goal is not to extend the life of these resources, as one might think. The goal is not to allow for enough time so that we can innovate in these quote unquote renewable energies and open the gate for another age of human flourishing. The goal is to reduce. Basically take us back to the medieval ages. So we talk about the problem with carbonization. You cannot live in society at any development stage without contributing to the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's impossible. You can't do it. There is no such thing as a 100% clean air. If what you are calling dirty is carbon dioxide. Furthermore, humans are not the cause of quote unquote carbon pollution in the atmosphere. First of all, carbon is not a pollution to the atmosphere, but of all of the CO2 in the atmosphere, human activity is responsible for roughly 1%. It's nothing. But the stated goals are impossible to achieve, basically, of the environmental cultists. So why do it? Why put so much money into wind and solar and those kinds of energies when they are just simply destined not to work? My stated reasoning is that, I mean, they want you to have less access. They want you to sort of rely. I mean, it's the government. They want you to rely on them for everything.
Reliance. It's all about reliance. We need to rely on the government. And this is one of the tools that the left sees as an ability for them to have to rely on the government.
Right. There's never going to be a world in which, any Joe Biden owned property is going to be without gas and oil powered facilities. Never. Because
it's always going to have a backup generator. It's always going to be able to run. It's always going to be able to run on some kind of fossil fuels. So one of the problems that we are coming up with is the alternate energy sources. The fuel sources that we were talking about are vastly superior to anything mentioned, with the exception of nuclear. Right,
which is the only quote unquote
spectacular.
Yeah. Right, the only
it's
quote
spectacular,
unquote
but
clean...
yet the left hates that too.
Right. It is,
and so they hate it because of the nuclear waste that's made from it. But we have ways to get rid of that. That it will all be fine, and it is fine. There's nothing wrong with nuclear power. So what they're really focusing on is wind and solar, right? That run. Wind runs turbines. Solar is powered by the sun. Sometimes the sun doesn't shine. Sometimes the wind doesn't blow. So you still have to have these abilities, these resources available to you. If not, you're going to have rolling blackouts, rolling brownouts. They happen in large population centers as it is. They are not sound sources of good, reliable energy like the left would have you believe. As a matter of fact, okay, so again, going back to the war in Ukraine and Russia, right? Right now, Germany has reignited 5 of their coal facilities. You can look it up. All the places you're talking about it: WAPO, Forbes, The Guardian, Daily Wire. I'm sure Vox even has an article on it, and they're calling it clean coal. Now, there's nothing special about this coal, except for the fact that they have to have this because they have become reliant on foreign sources of energy, and now they're in trouble come wintertime. So they had to do this. They had to reinvest in dirty energy. It's not going to hurt or help them to rely on these things. These are good things for them to do. It's not going to hurt them, and it certainly doesn't help them by keeping them turned off, right? And this is a movement that makes us dependent on bad actors in the world. Environmentalism does not understand the national security implications from the nonsense that they spew out of their face holes. It doesn't work the way they want it to. The world is not unicorns and rainbows. There are bad actors in the world who want us to do poorly, namely those that aren't afraid to use their energy for such causes. China, Russia, but no one wants to talk about that on the environmental left. These alternative forms, while they might get there someday, they are not there today, and forcing us with the government gun to get there is going to cause more resentment and more problems for the future whenever they are there and are ready to go.
Right. So that's the quote unquote war on dirty energy, fossil fuels. But what about the from what I hear, there's one source of carbon dioxide that is just so harmful to us, and that's got to be all of the cars we have driving around.
Oh man,
there's just so many cars, Stephen. you know, and they're
Cars make up a
constantly,
fraction of the carbon emissions that we
yeah,
have in the
they're
United States.
constantly
A
spewing
fraction.
emissions, you know, and some of them are big and scary, and those big trucks, they got to spew more, so those are really bad. So what are we going to do about all of the cars?
So just in case anybody wants to Google something truly fascinating, Google the amount of emissions that were put into the atmosphere by the Mount St. Helens eruption in 1980. Mount St. Helens in Montana, huge eruption. In its eruption process, it spit out more CO2, more methane, more of these bad things into the atmosphere than all of the cars in the history of the United States ever have, all at one time. And you're going to tell me that me driving my 2008 Ford F-150 is killing the environment? Ridiculous on its face. Now, let me give the listeners at home full disclosure. I love electric vehicles. I think that they are the coolest thing. They're not the solve of the climate problem. So one, the climate problems aren't as exaggerated as the people say they are. Two, government subsidized cars aren't going to be the fix of it. Do I want one? Yeah, but that's because I think they're cool, not because I think it's somehow going to save the earth or some nonsense like that.
Right. And so, like,
let's talk about electric cars for a bit.
Let's do because that is their solution, and it's another. I made it its own little section because it is being pushed on you, whether you really are paying attention to it or not. I thought of this episode mostly as a warning to people not to get rid of your gas powered cars. Go get an EV if you really want one, but cool. don't get rid of your gas powered cars.
Yeah, so California is going to outlaw the sale of gasoline-powered cars by 2035. Again, Google it; it's there. Now, one of the things that's being misreported is people think that they're only going to be able to sell battery electric vehicles. These are what we call EVs. These are fully electric cars. That's not true. They're only outlawing the sale of ICE vehicles, internal combustion engine, ICE vehicles. So hybrids will still be sold. So those are vehicles that have some battery power and some ICE components. So only the ones that are solely ICE for cars and light duty pickups. So my Ford F-150, a Chevy Colorado, those vehicles will have to be either a hybrid, an EV, or a battery power, a BEV, a battery powered EV. So it could be a few different things. And people go, oh, well, that's California. They're kooky. Again, what starts on the coasts makes its way towards the center. And they had some problems with it this past summer. They were begging people not to charge their EVs during certain times of the day. But what if I got to go to work and I've got to charge my car? I'm sorry, we have a crappy grid that's based on too much solar and wind power, but I've got to go to work. You can't tell me not to charge my car. Also, the other thing that they don't talk about in California is whenever there's like an impending storm or something, what impending storms in rural Mississippi, what would you and your family do?
We would gas up,
go to town, make sure everything's got gas in it, maybe get a jerry can full of gas or something like that. Yeah, you can't do that with an EV. So impending weather or shortages or something like that, people would be waiting in line all day. I'm not exaggerating. That is not an exaggeration. All day to charge their cars, because the government is forcing technology on people that it's not ready for. Our society is not ready for the technology that is being forced upon us, because it's not coming through R&D through the market. It's coming through forced government edict. It's coming from the government gun. If you don't do this, we will force you to do it. So yeah, they are less reliable. People don't want to talk about this. They are less reliable. They are only made possible through huge government subsidies. I like Tesla. Tesla is an American company making American cars. People forget that. They think it's some European country. It's not. Tesla is an American company making American cars. I love that. But I don't think they should be doing it with government subsidies. And they're still $100,000. There is no cheap Tesla. There's not a Tesla that I can afford. There's not a used Tesla that I can afford. So they have a huge government subsidy problem. they are going to try to force that on us, and that's a problem. And it's going to make us less mobile. I cannot do what I like to do with an electric F-150 Lightning. I think it's a super cool vehicle, but I can't do what I like to do. I can't tow, I can't haul, I can't do anything for any length of time. The largest battery on a Lightning, a Ford Lightning, is a 320-mile battery. It's 120 something kilowatts or something like that. Power pack. Well, people have tried to tow with this. If you want to check this out, Google it. I suggest TFL Truck on YouTube. They do great reviews on things like this. You might get 100 miles towing out of that vehicle. Could you imagine towing for 100 miles and then stopping to charge your truck for 40 minutes so you can tow another 100 miles? You're gonna get nowhere. My whole rant about that is to say this: we are not ready for electric trucks. We are not ready for electric towers. And if they try to force that on us, we're in trouble. We might be ready for electric cars. 300 miles on a single charge isn't so bad, but road trip, you're going to have a hard time road tripping 1,000 miles in a day with a toddler, say, for example. I know people on YouTube have done it. Engineering Explained did it on YouTube. It was a very fascinating video. Most people couldn't do what he did. That's just the fact of the matter. Most people couldn't do what he did in order to go 1,000 miles in a day.
Yeah. I was going to let Steven speak from expertise, where I spoke from ignorance on this, because he knows a lot
I love this topic. I love electric cars. I think they are cool. We're not ready for them.
We are not. And what people don't understand is that the internal combustion engine is the tool that you use to move long distances. Like there's no substitute. These policies are put into place by elites who either it is a combination of they don't care because they won't be affected. They're always going to have access to whatever they need. Also, complete ignorance. These people do not understand what it means to live in rural areas. We live in rural Mississippi. You don't see a lot of electronic vehicles in rural Mississippi.
We have 0 fast chargers in an hour radius of where we live. 0. I'm not making that up. We have 0 fast chargers in an hour radius. If you travel, I think an hour to our west, you can get a Tesla charger. But if you don't have a Tesla supercharger, you're in trouble because you can't use Tesla superchargers on non-Teslas. So, I mean, it's just, it's not ready. And throwing $1 trillion at it like we did last year isn't going to fix that problem. Throwing money at this doesn't fix the problem, that the fact that the technology is not ready.
And that's the charging deal. The day-to-day use concern is much different. I can't use, like, unless I'm plugging it up every night, I can't use my electric vehicle day after day after day on a full charge. I can use my car on a full tank of gas. I mean, my daily use, I can get about 2 weeks out of a full tank of gas. And you can't do that with battery operated vehicles.
And so when the government comes down on you because now they have all the means and distributions of power because we've used government subsidies in order to go to renewables, and they say, hey, you can't charge your vehicle for a month. What are you going to do?
Right.
What are you going to do? Switzerland did that.
We have a lot of people who work on farms. Sometimes you have to travel a long distance to get to the farm that you own. And like, they do not understand rural life. They want everyone to live like they are in a city where you can have electric vehicles or ride around on bicycles, which is another thing they want you to do. You can, ride to work on your bicycle. We can't do that here. And it is it is a step backwards, massive step backwards in our industrial society, like in our industrial development.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe one day
further going back, it doesn't fix the problem that they say that it does. They say there's a problem and these electric cars are going to fix. No, that is not the solution. I'm going to bring up Engineering Explained again. I really like his videos. You can tell that he's on the left about a lot of his videos, and I don't care. He makes really good videos, but he's done the math on, well, what if I keep my 96 Camry rather than buy an electric vehicle? That electric vehicle, you don't pay off in emissions from the creation of that vehicle until you drive it for 10 to 15 years. And most people who buy electric vehicles aren't keeping them for 10 to 15 years. So you're actually doing worse by buying new electric vehicles every 1 to 5 years than you would if you just drove your old clunker around. That's just the fact of it. You were and then you talk about the creations of the battery and who has control of most of the lithium deposits and the ability to produce the lithium in the world. China. Do we want to keep enriching China? It's just a multi-layered problem that we're not ready for, and forcing it on us is going to make it worse.
Even forgetting emissions, people also don't understand this. Your battery operated vehicle runs on electricity.
Where's your electricity come from?
Electricity is not a renewable energy. It is not a clean energy. It is powered by coal and oil and gas, like
natural gas, nuclear.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a bunch of hogwash. And my advice to anyone listening is get an electric vehicle if it's convenient for you. Always have an internal combustion engine somewhere under your ownership.
We've talked about my wife getting one day, but I would still keep my truck. And I'll bring up the electric F-150 just to talk about how unpractical it is. I wanted an electric F-150, so the cheapest one that I could get in for what I wanted was $72,000. Jeff, can you afford a $72,000 vehicle? No, neither can I. And we're your average middle class people. I can't afford a $72,000 vehicle. And people are like, well, why don't you get the Pro? Why don't you get the one that's $40,000? Because it does not have enough battery. I have to have the extended range battery. The cheapest extended range battery I can get is $72,000. With the Pro, I could not drive to my parents' house 2 hours away and back, which I do regularly to help them out on their farm and things like that, because there's nowhere to charge here or there. So I would have to go stay overnight, charge all night long. Hopefully they have a dryer outlet available for me to charge and then drive back, because there's no faster. It doesn't work. It does not work.
We're sacrificing the new we're sacrificing basically reliable tools for the new thing. And the new thing is being pushed very hard. And I always worry when that is the case. I was talking to a friend of ours last night, and I'm going to bring up the saga of the 20-year-old Corolla. So my wife has a Corolla that she had when we first started dating, and it is 20 years old. And this friend of ours was saying, well, I have someone who might want it if you are interested in selling it. And I think I have been convinced to not sell it, to keep it. Not just because I'm not ready to get a new car, but even when I get a new car, to just have it as a third vehicle.
Keep a third vehicle. There's two of you. You need a third vehicle. Absolutely.
And I think if you wait around long enough, and like Steven's got this quote from California or wherever about how in 2035 we're all going to, they're going to eliminate sales of basically pedestrian internal combustion engines, because you can't. Freight, there will always be internal combustion engines because freight trucks can't run on battery alone. But I bet those internal combustion engine vehicles will become very valuable if this starts to take off.
Until they outlaw the private sale of them, because they will. Right now it's just, you can't sell them new in 2035. Well, they'll also eventually outlaw dealerships from selling them, and then they'll outlaw the private sale of them. That is, you're going down a slippery slope. Okay, just see if I'm a profit or not by 2050. That's all you got to do.
Right. And it is designed to, I think it's designed to confine you. I think it is designed because the freedom
people are easy to control if you can confine them.
Right. The freedom that you and I have, and it makes sense that this is happening in California. The freedom that people in California have to get fed up with the way their state is run and move Nobody there is packing up everything they own into a sedan, into an EV, and moving across country. Everybody's using
Your Tesla
U-Hauls.
Model X isn't going to get you to
Right.
Texas or to Tennessee.
And this getting rid of pedestrian EVs or internal combustion engines is just a step towards getting rid of all of them. The freedom that you and I have to travel to a place that is more in line with our values, that is more in line with our prosperity. This is a problem for the governments over us, because they, you need a populace to control, and limited transportation limits your freedom. So hang on to any of your gas powered vehicles. Don't replace everything with electric. That would be the height of error, I think. So
I concur.
Yeah. Though that's really the main environmental stuff we had. We also want to talk about a byproduct of this big focus on environmentalism and taking care of quote unquote Mother Earth. And that is the dehumanization that comes as part of it. I don't know if any of you have been paying attention, but human life is not sacred anymore. We could talk about abortion. That's one that Stephen and I have gone
it's gonna come up
before. But even barring that, which is always worth talking about, people sort of honor death in our society in a way that is gross. We talk for the longest time, it was about people who committed suicide. You felt very sad about that. We never really talk about the foolishness of the decision. Suicide's always sort of put on a macabre pedestal. And then as we became,
they did it because they had to do it because it was unbearable. I see what you're saying.
And as our society became more open and more, media sort of took off, we started doing this with celebrity suicides in spades. One that we often think and talk about is Robin Williams. Robin Williams killed himself, and there was not a negative word to be said about it.
Man, that was a sad day. Man, I love Robin Williams.
It is incredibly sad. But no one was having the conversation that really should have been had about. Obviously, you feel for him, but the thing I think we always fail to mention, we all, everybody does the hotline now and say, "Oh, there's help out there for you if you need somebody to talk to." But we should talk about suicide as something that is wrong to commit.
Yeah, it's wrong. Don't do it. You're taking innocent life. Your life is innocent. Don't kill yourself. It is a bad thing to do. It is not the solution for your problems. As a matter of fact, you're meeting an ugly end if you think that's the solution. You're not solving your problems or anyone's problems by committing suicide. It is a bad thing to do, and obviously we feel for people who have suicidal ideation. It's not that we don't care for them, but the message of this being bad needs to go out.
Right, it's the wrong thing to do. And as contrary as we are, it seems often that just because we hold a view, the world tries to hold the opposite view to spite us. So Canada is one of the most nightmarish hellscapes I can think of on this planet. And they have engaged in assisted suicide, which is the practice of a doctor helping
medically
you to kill yourself.
Yeah.
A doctor helping you to kill yourself. This has been legal in Canada for some time for terminally ill patients, severely ill patients, and it is legal somewhat in some parts of the country in the United States. There are other countries that legalize it as well. Well, Canada has decided to just go full in on this and has now is getting ready to update their law about euthanasia, which is what this is. Euthanasia to allow anyone who has anything as little as a mental illness to commit medically assisted suicide.
All right, so I want to start with this. There are parts of Canada right now where suicide is the leading cause of death.
Yeah.
That there are provinces in Canada where suicide is the leading cause of death, and people aren't talking about that.
Yeah, let's capitalize on that point. Anything as little as mental illness. In today's society, mental illness is the easiest thing to get diagnosed with. You basically just have to go see a counselor, a psychologist.
I have to go see a psychologist and tell them I'm sad. I will be clinically depressed and then I can kill myself. Literally. Yeah, we're not overstating this. It's literally becoming that simple. I saw a profile on a young man in Canada. I want to say he was 18 years old, 18-year-old man who was a diabetic, who was going blind in one eye and was suffering depression and wanted to kill himself through this program that they have, through the medically assisted suicide program. And they said, okay, we'll let you kill yourself. Here's your date.
And it's because he had the blindness in one eye. Like that's considered a severe illness.
Are you kidding me? Why don't you get the young man some help? Why don't you? Why doesn't your family help you out? It's ridiculous. But when you're dependent on the government for everything, families not there that help you out. It's a sick cycle.
And we talk about this in keeping in line with environmentalism. Again, as a byproduct, this also has a lot to do with government-run healthcare.
Yeah,
because the government doesn't value you as a person. They don't. And this thing is not unheard of in government-run healthcare. But this is more egregious than what we've seen in the past. In the past, you would see, death panels, people having to make decisions about who is more beneficial to society. So that's who gets the treatment.
We've seen that happen in Canada. We've seen that happen in England. We've seen that happen where the government and government-run healthcare can say your life is not worth saving. Again, we are not exaggerating. We can show you several profiles of children that has happened to, where they have overridden the parents' wishes and killed the child because the government didn't see that the treatment was necessary or important, or so on and so forth.
And now, not only do they say you're not worth treating, here's the pill to finish you off.
Mm-hmm.
That is what's happening now. And
it is a byproduct of environmentalism. It is a byproduct of people like Bernie Sanders and his acolytes teaching that the earth is overpopulated. So it's okay if people want to kill themselves because there's too many people on the earth as it is. That is a mainstream Democratic figure teaching that the earth is overpopulated. How about this one? Tracy Stone Manning. If you don't know who she is, please Google her. She is Biden's nominee for the lead to lead the Bureau of Land Management. That seems like a fairly important job. She was also an eco-terrorist in the 1980s who said that the earth is overpopulated, and she still holds those beliefs. These are mainstream figures on the left who think that it should be okay to decrease human population because, after all, we're killing Mother Gaia.
Well, and we can go back to COVID. All the points that Stephen made at the beginning about COVID, like COVID, this was such a cleansing thing for the earth. Basically, people celebrating that a virus was killing people to help lower the population.
Well, they didn't know that's what they were doing. In their defense, they didn't know they were doing that, but they were.
What we also don't talk about is the fact that suicide skyrocketed during COVID. People were left in their homes alone and broken.
So several studies have been done on this where they studied years lost in totality, and there were more years lost of human life because of the lockdowns than were saved. If they would have left everything wide open, there would have been more human years on the earth than the lives that were lost because of the shutdowns. Not making that up. Again, look it up.
So, these people, it
Well, it's a
is
natural outgrowth of the pro-choice movement. I mean, so whenever I heard about Canada's new law, it's called like MAD, something like that, medical assistance in dying. I think it's what
MAID.
it's called.
Yeah,
MAID.
yeah,
I prefer MAD. um, I called a family member of mine who was pro-choice, and I asked that family member, what are your views on this? And what I have found out is it's actually a natural outgrowth of the pro-choice movement, because you cannot logically hold the position that I have a right to kill a baby in my body, but I don't have a right to kill myself.
right. So
Those positions are in contrast to one another. So it is a natural growth of that. That in the same way that if you're pro-life, you cannot be intellectually consistent and say that you also support euthanasia. It's not possible. If you are
right.
pro-life, you cannot support euthanasia. Therefore, you think all life is sacred. If you are pro-choice, then you have to support euthanasia.
And we discussed a few weeks ago about the separation, the quote unquote separation of church and state. And this is what you get when you have a society that values liberty but not morality.
Yes.
This is what you get. It should not be legal. We've already talked about it being wrong. Now, and again, there's a duh argument to make about it should not be legal to commit suicide. Okay, how are you going to arrest a dead person? But
How are you going to arrest a dead person?
You can arrest the doctor.
Yeah, when you're talking about medical assisted suicide, when you're talking about euthanasia,
right.
yeah, outlaw that.
Obviously,
that should not be legal.
When we're talking about someone who is slitting their wrists in a bathtub, we talk about how wrong it's wrong. And
people bring up the extreme cases of Huntington's disease and things like that, or ALS, or these awful diseases. They are terrible. They are awful. I'm not confused by what's going to happen to those people. I have looked at profiles and looked at people with Huntington's. I have looked at profiles. I've had friends and loved ones die of ALS. It is terrible and it's awful. It's still not okay to kill that person.
And it's not okay for you to kill yourself.
No.
We've got to value the people in our society, the most broken people, the most distraught people. They should be taken care of. They should be protected.
Yes.
And many will argue that we're not in favor of that. Well, I'm in favor of us as a society taking care of those people. And we do when we find them. But we have got, as a culture, it is gross. It is disgusting. It is abhorrent.
Well, and the amount of gaslighting that happens in the death cult, the amount of gaslighting that happens in the death cult is unbelievable. No, you can take the death cult of abortion. Let's start with that, and the amount of gaslighting that happens there. Well, you pro-choice people, if you don't believe that someone should be aborted, then you have to go adopt people, or you have to support my social welfare, or you have to do this. If not, you're not pro-choice. Pro-life. That's not true. I don't have to support all of your bad policies because I think life is important. And I don't have to support your craziness because you're in a death cult and you think that killing people is okay. Take the euthanasia part. Well, that means that the government, you have to support the government supporting them. No, I support family. I support having a family nucleus that cares for one another, that is a community that cares for one another. I support people going to church and having religious family that helps them during their times of need. Those are the things that make a society stronger. Having a larger government to do those things weakens a society. It does not strengthen a society. The death cult does so much gaslighting on this topic. It's ridiculous.
Right. Well, that is another cheery subject in the books for me and Stephen.
I mean, it's the fact that we value life, and we're not trying to be downers. We're trying to be very realistic about this topic. That we do value life. That environmentalism is leading to more and more death, more and more destruction, more and more decay of our society. And we believe in supporting the society. We believe in a strong family nucleus. We believe in strong religious communities. We believe in the things that make us stronger, not make make us weaker. We believe in the American dream. Everything that I
Right.
just brought up is part of the American dream. To be American, we already covered this on the show, but to be American is to be religious, to have a community around you. That was what the founding fathers expected of the American citizen.
Right.
And that is how we grow. That is how we nurture one another. That is how we care for one another. And that's how we care for the planet. You know, I was talking about this with one of our brothers in Christ, talking about the possible food shortage coming up next year. We almost had world hunger solved. We almost had it licked. And then the pandemic happened and resources to everything happened, and people are purposefully withholding food and things like that. And we're going to have a lot of people have food insecurity. And a lot of people are going to die of hunger this next year. That didn't have to happen. I don't have time to go into that. But I was talking to a brother in Christ, and he was talking about how it would be nothing for him to plant a garden in his backyard and to feed our entire congregation for an entire year. That would absolutely be possible if there was food insecurity. But if you're not part of a religious community, you're not a part of someone who can help you with that. And
Right.
so those are the things that make us stronger, not depending on the government.
Right. So
get involved in your churches, people.
Right. To recap, I heart CO2. Love it. I love oil and gas. Don't get rid of your
drill, baby, drill.
Powered, yeah, drill, baby, drill. Don't get rid of your gas-powered vehicles. And, you know, we all know those people in our society, those around us that we interact with that struggle. Just go be a friend to people.
And remember, more people is always better. More people is always better.
Right. Yep. So
go have babies, go care for people that are struggling and suffering, and be a part of a religious community. That's how you fix the dehumanization effort.
Amen. Can't say it better than that. So, well, we will see you guys again next week. I'm thinking we'll probably, maybe not next week, maybe the week after, we'll ruin Christmas. I'm looking forward to that one. So, anyway, until then, we will see you guys. Thank you.
God bless.